You went early,
I said
dude.
0.
Your 0 was before mine, then.
Maybe it syncs it up
Your
in the back
computer
end.
sucks.
Maybe.
Maybe. Welcome to Movie Boners, everyone.
Welcome to Movie Boners, where we talk about our own personal technical issues. This week's episode is absolutely ridiculous. This is definitely the hardest episode we've ever had to prepare for, and we've watched all of the
biggest
MCU
fucking
episodes.
headache I've gotten.
Yeah.
This was going into this week's. I was like, I know we were both really excited for it, and like, oh yeah, this will be great.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started like compiling my preliminary list, pulling the movies out, getting stuff watched. I'm like, it's gonna be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tried to like condense it. I was like, this list is horseshit. I don't like this episode.
Yeah, I went through all of my 2,000 plus movies in my collection and like pulled out all of the ones that had the big villains that I love. And my preliminary list was absolutely ridiculous. And it was so hard to pick 10. It was really hard because I wanted it to not be boring and obvious. Like you could certainly have the most obvious villains of all time. So I think I have a good variety in there, but yeah, it's difficult.
I know I've got, man, I'm just going to say this. My list will probably change almost on like a weekly basis.
Yeah. It's entirely possible my list will
so
change during the episode.
Right, I was like trying to figure it out, and I go, Jake's probably going to mention a villain that I'm going to be like, I can't believe I fucking forgot about that person.
Yeah, and one of the hard things is, so when we do our top 10 lists, I don't look at any other like top 10 lists out there until I've set mine. I feel pretty confident in it. And then I admit I will Google after the fact and be like, okay, just to make sure I didn't forget anything super obvious. And there's like weird for villains. There's weird ones out there like Mr. Potter from It's a Wonderful Life, who doesn't murder anybody, but he's like one of the top 10 villains on some lists. And I'm like, this is crazy. So,
right. Well, and I also found myself with a couple of villains out there that have been on and off of my list. There's a chance they will show back up on my list as we record.
Yeah.
This is like the least set in stone list I think I've ever made in my life. At least pertaining to movies.
Yeah. And it is probably one of the ones I put the most work into because it's like, it was so hard to pick 10. But before we get into it for real,
our beer.
What beer are you drinking today?
Were you malfunctioning?
Yeah,
there?
a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
A brain aneurysm.
I am drinking Convict Hill.
Oh.
It's an oatmeal stout.
Nice.
Yeah. Brewed here in Texas. It's really good. I really like oatmeal stouts. My dad got me into them, and this is a keeper.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited for...
I already know what one you're drinking. I know the can.
Yeah, I haven't seen this one before. I've had lots of stuff from this brewery, so I knew it would be good. So from Stone Brewing Company, they're famous for their IPAs, and this is another great one. But it's called FML, and it stands for Fear Movie Lions. And I thought that was appropriate for villains having to do with fear, and also movie randomly is in there. But I don't have any movies involving lions. Oh, well. But it's a hazy double IPA, 8.5%. So it should be an interesting episode.
It is a good one.
Yeah.
I have had that one a few times. It's good. Yeah, mine that I'm drinking is 8.
Nice.
8%. So real fun, real quick, funny kind of tidbit. Nothing to do with movies, but everything to do with beer.
Okay.
So living down here in Texas, from what I have learned beer-wise, there's not a lot of like necessity for people to be beer snobs here.
Yeah.
It's a very like I work with a lot of guys where they drink Corona or Dos Equis or like Miller Lite.
Yeah.
They stick very easy drinking beer, and they all tried one. I had it on our show, the Devil's Backbone.
Yeah.
From a while back. So apparently they all tried that one recently, and they're all like, "Oh my god, it was a 6% beer. It was so high." And then I was like, I was like, I just drank like an 11% beer a couple of weeks ago.
I was like, it's really not high until you get above 10%. When you get
right,
10 to 14% range, it gets crazy. But yeah.
Yeah. But it was kind of funny hearing them talk about, like, I can't believe they have beers that are like over 6%. And I'm like, yeah, that's a thing, guys.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's crazy. Up until a year or two ago in Colorado, beer in the grocery store was lower alcohol content than the same beer at a liquor store. They had like special low percent beers.
Yeah, the low ABVs.
Yeah, which is really weird.
Yeah, what was it, 5.2 or whatever?
Something like that.
They had to have it like...
Yeah, so it's weird.
So if my work crew happens to be listening and or watching, you guys are in desperate need to drink higher content.
Gotta step it up. What that means is you can't drink a 36-pack in a day, though, anymore. You can have about 2 or 3.
Yeah. Space.
Yeah.
But anyways, that was my fun little tidbit. Back to movie stuff. Real quick.
Yeah.
I'm late to this party, but I did watch the Netflix Fear Street trilogy.
Oh, yeah.
That you had told me about. And those were fun.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of horror.
Yeah.
Highly recommend those.
There's some fun homages to the first one, that especially there's a lot of like Scream feel in it. There's some Friday the 13th feel in it, or Final Girls or things like that.
Well, I really liked how each part really felt like a giant celebration of like iconic horror stuff. So I thought you would be happy to hear that I did finally watch those. Yeah. And I did enjoy them.
Yeah. As a horror connoisseur, I thought that you would, I was interested in your perspective at least.
No, it immediately put me into the like, oh my God, I'm watching 90s style slasher. Yeah. This is awesome. And then it was 80s style summer camp slasher. And it was like, yes. Yeah. And then it was like evil witches in the woods, like no technology, kind of pilgrimy days, even better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fun little series.
I really enjoyed it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Highly recommend that.
Okay. So.
Yeah. I feel like there was something else I was going to say, but now it's gone. Okay. So,
well, if you remember, you can interrupt. But yeah, we're talking about, we made lists about our top 10 favorite film villains of all time, and kind of across genres. Like, there's no specific genre, no specific anything. Yeah. Could be Disney villain, could be whatever. I really wanted to have some like good joke answers, like Ferris Bueller from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, or germs from Contagion or something, or tornadoes from Twister. But
okay, I thought about the tornadoes from Twister as well.
Having 10 spots, and there's so few places I could put in using the entire history of film. I was like, I could not spare the space for a joke. So all of mine are my actual favorite villains.
Yeah. And I tried really hard not to be like super predictable. Yeah. But you can't deny the brilliance with some of the very predictable villains.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wasn't going to be that guy that was like too good to admit that he loves certain villains. So some of my list will not be a shocker at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have a couple of obvious ones. They may not be obvious in the position they fall in, though. Some of them may be lower than expected.
Right.
And there are, I have about a dozen honorable mentions that could move up into my list at any given time.
Dude, I feel like my honorable mentions is probably too much. I also, what I was going to say earlier. Hey! trying to make this list, I also ran into a snag.
Okay.
A bit of a pickle. There were a few villains that have been on and off my list again, might be back on as the episode goes, but they're kind of spoilery villains. And I was like, I know we try really hard to keep our top 10 list spoiler free.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I kind of, I'm telling you right now, one of my actual top 10 villains is not on my list.
Okay.
Just because they are a major spoiler. So I feel like I'm going to put them in an honorable mention. And before we say, I'll be like, hey, spoiler alert.
Yeah. Okay. I know exactly what you mean because I had the exact same problem. Except I chose to include it, and I am going to dance around the spoiler and see how it goes. But there is one of mine that is a very heavy spoiler if you talk too much about it. So it's more of this movie is great and the villain is great, but just go watch it. It's just recommending it, I guess.
That's fair.
So I guess in general, villains, part of the reason we wanted to celebrate them and the reasons we love them so much is you can't really have a good movie without a villain. I think you need a antagonist. You need something for the hero to struggle against. And that tends to work well when it's a person or a character. And
damn, you can tell that actors and actresses, it is obvious how much they love diving into the role of a villain because you can it's almost like they are given a lot freer range to do what they want than like the hero's allowed to do. So they get to really let loose. And there are some of these villains, man, I was watching these movies and I'm like, shit, this is so good. You are too good at doing this.
Yeah, and it's very true. A lot of mine are like that. And I have noticed it seems like certain actors play a lot of villains, and I think it's just so enjoyable and they're so good at it. And yeah, probably they get to be weirdly eccentric or they get to take different risks that you just can't do with a lead main hero character.
Right.
And they all work. Yeah, they all work so well.
And the villains, I don't know about your list, but looking over my list, and even with the honorable spoilery mentions that I have, I'm like, I have a theme with my villains. And I never realized it until I actually wrote these names down, or these characters down, and then started really thinking about all of them as a group. And I was like, oh, God. Okay, I have a villain type, apparently.
That's actually funny. I feel like I have a villain type as well. Not all of the ones on my list fall into this category, but there are several. There's definitely a kind of villain that I gravitate to more than others. And so I tried to kind of explore that. That's part of the thing that's fun about these. A lot of the episodes we do where we're watching a bunch of movies back to back, or we're doing things in a sequence, whether it's one actor or one director or just a series like Marvel or something, you get to pull out things that you wouldn't normally notice if you watch them like one movie a year or something.
Right.
And so I think that's really, really fun.
Yeah, it is. And this was a headache. This was irritating.
It was
more of a headache than I think it should have been.
It was certainly a big headache. And I was trying to I was trying to be creative at first, where I was trying to pick out, okay, who is the not obvious villain, or what is a movie that someone like, this is the villain that you're kind of like just is assuming this is the bad guy. And then it ends up being like, oh no, this other character is kind of a villain in their own way. Like Jenny in Forrest Gump. It's like, no, Jenny kind of sucks. She's kind of a villain in a way. And so I was trying to get creative on it, and it led me down a rabbit hole.
The Twilight series.
Yes, absolutely. That was the worst. And I hate everything about it. You just
had that oh my God.
Yeah. Well, it's still so fresh in my memory.
I'm sorry. Yep.
But it led me down a path of looking at the American Films Institute. AFI did the top 100 heroes and villains, and they had like a definition of what a villain is. And so I thought that was a good thing to start with, which is a villain is a character whose wickedness of mind or selfishness of character and will to power are sometimes masked by beauty and nobility, while others may rage unmasked. So they can be horribly evil or grandiosely funny, but are ultimately a tragic character. And I thought that was true.
I like that.
True in my perspective, for sure.
Yeah, I like that. That's not too shabby.
Yeah, good job,
well,
AFI.
good, sir. Yeah, good job, AFI. Now I'm kind of curious to look at their list to see if, like, where my characters might end up, if they're even... I'm sure a few of mine are definitely on that list. I also have a feeling you and I are going to have some crossovers.
Yeah, we are.
I'm pretty positive on especially one of them.
It's inescapable. So, I may have juked you a little bit in the sense that there's one that I know 100% will be on your list, and so I didn't waste the slot on my list with it. As a way to like game the system, I was like, okay, this frees me up a little bit because I know I'm going to talk about it when he talks about it. So if you tricked me,
I should have thought of doing that. See, I'm doing it.
No.
We made it 15 minutes into the episode. I'm going to steal your mentality with the crossover I know is on yours. And I'm going to add my spoiler
What's going to be really funny is when we both drop.
My spoiler one is on yours?
Well, but also when we both dropped the same one and then we don't get to talk about it. Because he ends up not being on either of our lists. Because we trusted each other too much.
Shit. Now I'm nervous to do that.
I shouldn't have told you. I should have waited.
I'll hold off. I'll stick with my original plan.
Okay.
Maybe. All right.
Let's get into it. So our top 10 villain list. Before we change too many things around, let's get into it. So do you want me to go first? Yeah. I'll go first. How's that sound?
You go first.
It's been a while since we've done a top 10 episode.
It has been. It's been like 2 weeks, hasn't it?
I don't know. What did we do recently?
When did we do Disney?
Yeah, I guess that was 3 weeks ago. Because it was Twilight, then They Live. I don't remember what came before Twilight.
And now, yeah.
I think it was Disney.
You're right. Oh.
Something else was before Twilight.
Villains. So number 10, go ahead.
Okay.
God damn it.
So number 10 is a relatively recent addition to my sphere of consciousness, I guess. I saw these movies a month or two ago, and so this entry may be partly based on me just it being the latest and greatest. Like, you know how you do that where you see something and you kind of get obsessed with it and you're like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever seen. Just because it's new. So there's a possibility that that's so there. Bad. Me putting that in number 10 for a movie I just saw, a couple months ago, but I've been thinking about it constantly nonstop since. So it stuck with me. I was very impressed with it. And so my number 10 is Joseph, the character played by Mark Duplass in the movie Creep and Creep 2.
Oh my God.
And if you haven't seen those movies, I was very impressed by the complexity and nefariousness of his character. So the Creep 1 and Creep 2 are both very simple movies, very limited casts.
Yeah, and they give you the heebie-jeebies pretty
they
bad.
Are incredibly effective. And Joseph, the character, and the way Mark Duplass plays him, he's very disarming, very kind of like, he's weird enough to be off-putting at the same time, but he's also kind of inviting. He's a little bit too personal for someone you just met, but he seems to kind of just be a friendly guy, a little bit weird, a little bit eccentric, but nice enough. And so I liked Mark Duplass a lot. I liked him in The League. I like him in like every movie I've seen him in. He seems like he enjoys playing the role. For the first film especially is from the perspective of him hiring a filmmaker to document like his life and kind of his whole day, because he says that he has an unborn child, his wife's pregnant, and he has a brain cancer, so he wants to document it. So it's kind of a found footage style movie, extra creepy in that sense. And yeah, he's just a weird guy, kind of a creepy guy. It's an accurate title to call it creep. Dude. And part of the reason I think it works is it's because there's a real life inspiration of how people on Craigslist are sketchy AF. And there's been at least one serial killer who finds victims on Craigslist. And so you never know what you're going to get. And this is kind of based on that premise of, I don't know who this guy is. He just hired me. I'm going to show up, and he's a little weird.
Yeah. If memory serves me right, I watched both Creeps before you.
You did.
Because I was still...
I heard about him from
in
you.
Colorado when I watched them. Yeah. Man... Those movies, like, they'll still pop up now and again on my watch again, or movies you might like, and I'm like, ew, no, can't. It's not that they're scary, but Mark Duplass, because I knew him from The League.
Right.
That was my introduction to his whole career, and I love that show.
Yeah.
By the way, go watch The League, especially now that football season is kicking up. Do it, because it's hilarious. But that was my introduction to him. And then I saw him in Creep. Well, I saw him in like a couple other independent films.
Safety Not Guaranteed.
Safety Not Guaranteed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I watched Creep and Creep 2. And both. I was a little hesitant to even watch Creep 2.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, this guy's gross. And it's not like it's a very... It's not like an action-packed kind of story. There's not a lot that really happens in the movie, but he does such a great job of making you so uncomfortable for 80 minutes, because the movies aren't even like a full hour and a half, if I remember right. But from the moment he shows up on the screen, you were just like, I know the movie's called Creep. I know it's not going to be like a feel-good kind of story, but he is really making me just like, camera dude, you need to get the fuck out of there. Why would you ever agree to this ad? Fuck that. Bail.
Yeah, and he does a good job of being creepy and gross without being like a pervert or like some like there's zero like sexual anything in it really. It's just... And I think that's good. I think that would have been too cheap or too obvious to do, where it's like, that's easy to really make people uncomfortable in that sense. And just, it does it in a different, not normal way of just acting.
Yeah. And he's, so as uncomfortable as you are every time he's on the screen, you actually like I have known people that are that awkward, maybe not to that extent, but that are very awkward and just they have specific oddities to them that you as
don't pick up on social cues.
I don't want to say a normal person, but you're like, what the fuck? Like internally. So knowing that you know people that kind of have these oddities, you keep watching him because you're like, it could just be he's just a weird dude.
Yeah. It's a while before anything serious happens, and you're like, "Oh, okay."
It's a heebie-jeebie kind of movie, but he is, he is fantastic in that movie. Like he's really good.
And I think extremely fascinating. That's one of the reasons I put him on the list, is because he stands out as a fascinating, eccentric, well-planned, well-executed person who's a villain, certainly through and through, and just has decided and made peace with it, and is excellent at what he decides to do.
Yeah.
So that's my number 10.
That's a good number 10. All right. My number 10. Super famous. I mean, this character, he's huge. My number 10, I'm not even going to try to like build it up.
Needs no introduction.
My number 10 is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from the first Ghostbusters movie. I'm kidding.
I wouldn't be surprised.
See, we can still throw a joke in there.
That was your way of sneaking in another villain without putting him on your list. It was a name drop.
Although he was never even an honorable mention, but he should be, even though he's only in the movie for like 5 minutes, maybe. But no, okay. So my number 10. Actually, you kind of segued with a lot of my villains earlier, by the way. So
you're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
My number 10 is one of the handful of villains that this actor has played, and trying to figure out which of his villains is my favorite. It ended up not being that difficult for me, especially after I rewatched this one. It's like, yeah, this is the one. So my number 10 is Stansfield from Leon, the Professional. Gary Oldman as a villain.
Wow, so like exactly who I was thinking of before when I said some actors play villains consistently and always do it well.
All of his villains are fantastic. They're amazing. You can tell he is having a blast with it. But there is something extra frightening when it comes to Stansfield from The Professional. His extra playfulness, the fact that he's actually a detective who is also a drug lord and kind of crime boss. And he's incredibly eccentric. Like, he's frightening. He has no He never hesitates to just pull the trigger, which is what I love. I like a villain that is okay with, like, I can pull the trigger if I have to. I don't like
so many movies just invest so much in the threat of threatening to do something, and so few movies actually follow through because, you know, the hero shows up, they save the day, they right in the nick of time kind of thing. And I really appreciate a movie that's just like someone acts like a normal person and then they execute something they said they were going to do right when they said they were going to do it. It's very satisfying.
It's very, and it adds credence to, like, oh yeah, you are bad. Like, you're a legitimate villain. The whole him visiting the family's home and asking the dad, like, do you like Mozart? I love Mozart. I can't even do it. And then he proceeds to blast the entire family away with a shotgun and just walks away.
Yeah.
Like, Stansfield is frightening. He's incredible. The movie's amazing. If you've never watched it,
that's exactly what
where the fuck have you been?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think a lot of people, especially our generation and younger, may have not gotten around to or even heard of yet Leon the Professional, but it's a great movie.
But you need to. It is a great movie. Funny little little tidbit or asterisk. So, in watching Gary Oldman villains, my daughter watched The Fifth Element with me. It was her first time ever watching it. Dude, that kid reacted exactly how all of us all did that first time watching it. Where you're like, this is such a weird movie, but I love it. I'm laughing. It's a lot more inappropriate than I remember it being, and that was a little awkward, but live and learn, I guess.
I always am surprised by that, too. I'm like, well, partly Mila Jovovich has hardly any clothes on for a lot of it, and then they have, like, sex in that
it's not, like,
at the end.
Focused on that, and so I didn't even... And I was 10 when I watched it and became obsessed with it, but I asked her, like, so what kind of villains would be on your list? And the first one she told me was, like, the bad guy from Fifth Element, Dad. He's hilarious. I'm like, he is kind of funny, huh?
That's one of my... there are so many great Gary Oldman characters, but I do love... I forget his name, but the arms dealer from Fifth Element. He's so good.
It's Zorg.
That's right. It was a cool alien name.
Zorg. Yeah. So my number 10 is Stansfield. Because, God.
Yep. That's a good one. So my number 9 is... There are a long list of scariest villains in, like, a kids movie, but I think this is the top. This is number 1.
I already know which one you're gonna put.
So my number 9 is Judge Doom from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. played by Christopher Lloyd.
Oh, you went with the other one. I thought you were going to say the bad guy from, was that Chitty Chitty Bang Bang?
That was a very close second. Yep. You know me very well. Because the kid catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is in the very same category, and they're both extraordinarily scary for kids' movie villains.
Yeah.
But Judge Doom, I thought, was even maybe a little more relevant, a little bit more, I don't know, great, because his character has a little bit more substance, I guess, than the kid catcher. The kid catcher is certainly scary, certainly nefarious, but Judge Doom is like, he is got like this plot that he's trying to do with these tunes and trying to, with the thing that sticks out is the dip where he's dips the shoe cartoon into the vat.
The dip is so disturbing.
It is. It is. It's like, yeah, it's torture to watch, and he's like killing these cartoons, which is so evil because they're so pure and lovely and fun. And
it's a shoe.
Yeah, it's a cartoon shoe, sentient, very much alive, and screams, and all the things that is horrifying to a child to watch. But one of the things I also realized watching villain movies is every villain has at least one defining scene that like really sets their status, sets their motivations, sets their ability or whatever. And the one that stands out in your mind is like, ooh, that gave me the EBGBs. It's whatever. And with Judge Doom, it's absolutely the end where he gets flattened, and then he like uses the helium to get back into shape, and reveals that he's a cartoon. Spoiler alert.
When his voice changes pitch.
Yeah.
Like as soon as you said Judge Doom, that voice went through my head. When I was going through my movies and I came across Roger Rabbit, I was like, oh, Judge Doom would be a good one. The voice went in my head. And I'm like, yeah, he's not on my list, but he is terrifying, especially when you're young and you see that movie for the first time.
And it's right after he filled himself with helium to make himself not flat anymore. And so his voice is higher, and his eyes had just fallen out. He had fake eyes in, and then you see his tune eyes, which are like bugging out towards the camera. And he's like talking to Bob Hoskins. He's like, my voice was just like this. And it's so scary. So he's nefarious. He tortures cartoons. He kills really innocent, like little gentle creatures. And it's a tragic thing. He
is a disturbing character. I mean, I have yet to get over him killing the cartoon shoe. Yeah. It's a shoe, but when it like can't avoid the dip anymore and he's getting melted into it, it is so fucked up. Yeah. You're like, I watched this as a child. This is probably more violent and disturbing than half of the like live action movies that I've watched.
Yeah. I would rather watch Predator rip someone's spine out.
Dude, that scene, I told my daughter, because we have this huge list of movies that we're going to just randomly watch. And I told her, like, Predator's on this list. It's an action movie. You could see Arnold go fisticuffs with an alien that looks like a crab thing. She was like, what? And I was like, yeah, animal. Plus, you get to see the coolest scene in this movie, and one of the coolest scenes ever. The Predator tears a dude's spine and his skull out of the body and holds it up as a trophy. I told her that, and my daughter was like, I'm not watching that. That sounds disgusting. I'm like, you will. Anyways.
Oh, man.
I love that scene.
Yeah, it's a great scene. My
number 9.
My wife just texted me, are you okay? Because she heard the screaming.
Because she heard you do the voice?
Yeah.
Just send her like a screenshot of Judge Doom.
Then she won't be okay. I appreciate her checking up on me. Okay.
It's true love right there.
That's true.
So my number 9 is probably the most surprising on my list.
Okay.
He is the villain of the first movie. And they kind of give him a weird character arc through the rest of the series. But
I know who you're talking about.
Him in this first movie is so much fun. And although the lead actor is the star, he's on the cover, he's everyone watches a movie for him. I personally feel that the villain kind of steals the spotlight for most of the film, at least for me, because he's such a blast to watch. But my number 9 is Barbossa from the Pirates of the Caribbean.
I was wrong.
Dude, Jeffrey Rush kills this character. He's on the screen. Like, I anticipate when I put the movie in, because I was like, I think Barbossa might end up on my list because he's so playful and he's so, like, just open about being evil and a villain.
He's like,
and he happens to be cursed and can't
pirates.
die.
We do what pirates do. Like, what's the big deal?
Right. And he totally, like, I love all the little choices that he chose to do with the character where he does do, like, the pirate stereotypes. He does the R's and but he does it in such a fun, silly, evil way that is so, I love when I put the movie in, I was like, I'm half tempted to just skip until he shows up. Like, nothing against the rest of the cast. Obviously, people watch the movie for depth because him as Sparrow is just perfect. But honestly, when Barbossa shows up on the screen, I can quote more Barbossa lines than I can Jack Sparrow lines because he's just so engrossing. And he is actually gross. Like, he just looks so gross.
Well, he's undead. It's part of the comes with the job title.
Right. And he's a pirate. So they don't care. But he just, and I've noticed this every time that I've watched a series. Every time he's on that screen, I'm just like, he is so good. I just can't get over how much fun I have watching him. And just, so I couldn't deny him the spot. And I also took pride in, like, he'll be the shocker. He'll be the surprise twist for my list.
I originally thought you were going to say Terminator because he also does a switch for the second movie where he's the good guy. But no, great point. And I think it's also a great point that you brought up about being excited for him to show up and wanting to fast forward to it. As I was putting this list together and I was like pulling these movies, I was like, okay, I need to watch this, And then I was like, there's like, in several of the movies, there's like 30 minutes, 45 minutes before the villain shows up. I was like, skip ahead. Like, I just want to see them. I don't care about the hero or everything else. I really enjoy the villain part. And then there are a couple where, like, the villain is the very first scene. I was like, this is great. I love when they do this.
Yep. Now, there's also been a couple where you can't skip because the whole, even before the villain actually shows up, the whole buildup of the first half or however long before they're on screen is part of, like, directly tied to them. So you can't, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Okay. That sounds like a hint.
Yeah. So Barbossa was my number 9. He's just such a joy.
He really is. I think he's one of the bright spots of those movies for sure. So my number 8 is kind of a cheat in a sense. There's a little twofer action in the same movie. There's there's a main villain who is my number 8, but there's also a little bonus villain in it that I also really like. So my number 8 is Francis Costello, or Frank Costello from The Departed.
Man, he was on and off my list so many times. He's one of the mentions. She fell funny. I will never get over that line.
And he's great. Jack Nicholson is so great, and we talked a little bit about this in the I just blanked on the movie. What movie did we just do with Jack Nicholson in it? As Good as It Gets.
We've talked about it.
No, thank you. No thanks for anything. As Good as It Gets. Jack Nicholson is so great, and he's just commanding of the scenes he's in, and especially playing a organized crime boss. I think that he one of the defining scenes of this movie that kind of defines that villain is when he's first talking to Cardigan, and he has like they're at breakfast and he's wearing the like leopard robe, and he's just talking about like John Lennon and being an artist, but he has a severed hand in a bag that's like all bloody.
Pulls the hand out of the bag and he's like aiming it at him.
I just carrying on a conversation about being an artist and using like all these people, and just the way that he's eccentric, he's playful, like he's kind of playful. He'll like play jokes on you. Like in the porno theater, he pulls out the like dildo and stuff.
Yep.
But the thing about him is you don't know if he's gonna like make a joke at your expense or if he's gonna kill you, because he's like
right.
so scary and violent and unapologetic, but also kind of fun and charismatic. And he says some of the like most like unpolitically correct things, but he's a villain. Like, what do you want from him?
Right. He's a very effective villain. I like that you said every time he's on the screen and he's making jokes, you really don't know, like, is someone going to die? Is he just plotting for someone to get whacked all of a sudden, or what the fuck is going on? That I will never get over it when he shoots the lady in the back of the head and her body falls over and he goes, she fell funny. That's a defining scene to me, because his demeanor in that isn't that like he just assassinated or executed this woman. It's just like, oh, her body fell weird. Like, that's the observation he took from it. To me, that's just so like, you are not human. Yeah. Like, there's zero humanity in you. This is wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, the hand. I also laugh with the hand scene where his accomplice or his number two, what's his name? He's like, it was so kind of you to ask him which hand he jerked off with. Like, yeah. Frank is so.
And he's like, he's kind of a. He's kind of a complex character, because he is so cold-blooded and heartless and doesn't care about anything. And then he is caring, and he is kind of paternal towards these guys. And he takes in Colin, what's his name? Matt Damon's character, Sullivan. And he's kind of the bonus villain, because you also love, like, enjoy hating him and his little journey, and he's a little minion, but he's like a dad to him, and he's like pretty paternal, and for all the guys in his group, he's like definitely watches out for him and watches out for the neighborhood and the way he talks to people when he goes to like the corner store and stuff. It's just, he's a complex, crazy character, and you love watching him.
And he's scary the whole 3 hours of that movie.
He is. Even when he's being funny, you're like, I'm laughing, but I'm also pretty sure you're going to kill me or kill somebody.
I'm pretty sure someone's going to die soon. Yeah. That's a great pick. Yeah, I on and off with that one. All right. So my number 8, kind of spoilery.
Okay.
I've talked about this movie before, but this is a character, like, the movie's based on a book, and the book just stuck with me, still sticks with me. I mean, and this character especially is the reason I don't recommend couples to watch this movie together ever. So one thing, I don't know how to avoid the spoiler, man. All right, I'm going to spoil the movie Gone Girl. So if you haven't watched it, turn off now or fast forward a little bit. Amy Dunn is one of the most frightening movie villains I think I have ever seen in my life. Like
100%.
She is so calculated, and she is so heartless, and just, oh man. Like, when I rewatched it, because she was another character I thought, she's got a chance to be on this list of mine. And then rewatching it, I was like, man, when you see her in that fucking car after everything that her shitty husband, who is not a good dude, but everything she has done to set him up just so that she can, like, get away with being selfish. Bitch.
Yeah, she really takes it out on him.
But the scene that I think really cements just how horrifying, and you kind of get the sense of, like, her limits know No Bounds is her sex scene with Neil Patrick Harris.
Yeah.
The way she plays that whole scene off sets up the all the bruising and every step she does just to show back up and be like, hey, just evil, 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 evil.
Yeah, she's a psychopath.
She is. But I mean, what a great character.
Yeah.
When you can just watch a character and the whole time you were like, oh my God. Yeah. Grating your teeth.
Yeah.
And just out of fear for everyone around her or that character.
Yeah. She makes you so uncomfortable. She really makes, like, you are adamantly rooting for her to not get away with it. You're like, this girl needs to go down. She is the worst. I hate everything about her. Right. And she's like continuing to get away with things. And you're like, oh no, this is terrible.
And then when it ends and all said and done, and you're like, God, she's even got it all planned for like in the future. What the fuck? Yeah, I can't deny her brilliance. She is so effective. Yeah. And like, as much as I hate her as a character, I do get excited for that break when the big reveal shows up, and you're just like, oh God damn it. So Amy Dunn.
Yeah, huge props to Rosamund Pike too for playing her the way she does, because it's a great movie and she does it so well. She was literally the very top of my honorable mentions list. Like if this was this was a top 11, she would have been right there.
She's just so good.
So my number 7 is,
you know what we should do? We should put like a little blip, spoiler over, and then go to yours.
We could do that. Spoiler over.
We should do that.
So my number 7 is probably one of the more obvious ones so far. I haven't had any too big names so far. This is one of the big names, especially if you followed our show and know we're fans of this movie. My number 7 is Hans Gruber, as played by the great late Alan Rickman in Die Hard.
Yep. It's our first crossover, so I won't say too much. Go ahead and do your spiel.
I knew it was inevitable. He's one of my personal all-time favorites, obviously. That's why he's on my list, but it's because he's one of the all-time best. He's a criminal mastermind, and I love how he uses the guise of like a terrorist hostage situation in order to just steal $640 million from the Nakatomi Corporation. What makes him so great is his confidence. Primarily, he's very confident in his ability to plan and execute this heist, essentially. And so every time something comes up, or the police show up, or the FBI shows up, they cut the power, he's like, yep, perfectly part of the plan. I was waiting for that. I know what to do next. And he's a great... This is weird to praise a villain, but he's a great leader. Like all of his guys know what to do, where they're supposed to go. He's just great at like giving directions. And so he's in complete control. And I think that's a great mark of a good villain, is when they're in complete control of the situation. They've planned it all out, even what the hero's going to do, even what any other outside force could contribute. They were waiting for it. They knew that would happen. And it makes you as an audience and as someone rooting for the hero even more feel like what can you do? How can you get out of this situation? Because they've thought of everything. This is impossible to get it surmounted. And so it makes the hero's success even more satisfying. So that's why Die Hard is so good.
Yeah. we could go on for a long time of why Die Hard is so great.
Yeah.
I told my daughter, you are watching Die Hard at Christmas this year because it's the greatest Christmas movie ever. And she was like, Dad, how can it be a Christmas movie if it has the word die in the title? And I was like, it takes place at a Christmas party at Christmas time. You will watch this movie. She just rolled her eyes at me. I agree with everything you said about Hans Gruber. He's a little bit higher up on my
That's
list.
fair.
So we'll get more into his character in a little bit.
Yeah, it is so hard to like place these. Like I could easily move these around wherever. Tried to place them where they made the most sense. But he seems to stand out as being unique, being exceptionally clever. There are things about him. One of my favorite, I guess, it's a defining scene, but it's really late in the movie when he goes to find the detonators and he meets John McClane for the first time, and he decides to like pretend to be a hostage. And the way that he does that so quickly, drops his accent as much as he can, and then starts coming up with like an alibi, and he's like says his name is Bill Clay, and and then John McClane sees over Alan Rickman's head, over Hans Gruber's head, that Bill Clay does work here, and he's checking it out. But Hans Gruber knew that. He knew to look it up and noticed that sign and noticed that a guy named Bill Clay lurked there and had his like all stuff planned out ahead of John McClane even thinking to test him. Like he's so quick and so clever. And so I think he's so entertaining because he's
super
such
entertaining.
funny lines. He seems like he's having a good time as this not a terrorist, but just as this bank robber.
I mean, everything he predicted would be happening, with the exception of John McClane being there, happened. So even the headache of John McClane, Gruber never really like freaks out over it. He just kind of like, okay, I guess we'll deal with that problem.
We'll adapt and we'll work it out.
He's so good. My number 7, if you've been listening to our show long enough, this should not come as a surprise to you at all. I'm kind of obsessed with this character. I've got posters of him. I've got collectible figures of him. I've got 4 or 5 of the Funko Pops of this dude. I love this character so much and what he represents. My number 7 is Pennywise the Clown. I love Pennywise. When I was younger and I watched the Tim Curry It was the first thing that's supposed to terrify you. Never terrified me.
Yeah.
Very entertaining. I've always liked it. But then I read the book, and then I saw the movie, the newer movie when it came out with you and Christy, actually. And I remember reading the book and getting the full deep dive into the character of Pennywise when it really started resonating with me, and my obsession kind of began with this guy.
Yeah.
And then we saw the movie, and it just like sealed it.
Yeah.
I love Pennywise.
Great representation.
I think his whole demeanor of not just killing and eating, but making sure that he can inflict as much mental turmoil and fear into his prey as possible.
Yeah.
And he almost delights more in the game than the actual kill. The kill is just necessity, but the game is where all the fun is, and that's where he really that's what he embraces. I love that. He's always around. What's crazy, if you watch the movie or read the book, he's everywhere.
Yeah.
He'll show up everywhere in the background, so he's constantly watching, constantly learning all of the kids, like their routines, their habits, and he uses all of that against them.
Yeah.
He's terrifying. I mean, when you really buckle down, you're like, I know a lot of people will say, oh, Pennywise isn't scary, or the movie or the book aren't scary. And I'm like, what's scary about him is that his love for just torment.
Yeah.
That's frightening. The effect that he has on this town, on the adults too, because they all know that every 27 years, there's going to be horrific murders and disappearances, most of which will be children.
Yeah.
And it'll last for a while and then it stops. But they're all under this like weird mental haze of, we know it's horrible.
Yeah.
We don't step in. His effect on the town is really what scares me.
Yeah, it's just what happens, and they learn to live with it.
Yeah, they just accept it, which that's fucked up. Yeah. But Pennywise, he's so much fun. He's so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's very impressive the extent that he goes to, like you mentioned, he's watching those kids and learning about their insecurities, the things about their very personal lives and very personal problems that bother them, and then inhabiting that and being that, like shoving it in their face and making them even more scared, and even in like a very personal way that most killers are like, I'm going to just be a killer at this camp, and I choose a persona. Like, it's like, no, this is specific to you and your life and your problems and your family that I'm going to choose. Yeah,
he tailors that. And it's not just so much inflicting fear, but just like, he is like, I mean, if people have a soul, Pennywise is there to just completely obliterate it and just make it so weak and deflated. And that's when he'll consume. It's I have become obsessed with Pennywise and this story. And I could not deny him a spot on this list. I was like, I just can't get over it. My daughter is always like, Dad, you have enough Pennywise. I'm like, I kind of want more of that.
Yeah. There's always room for more.
I freaking have fridge magnets of him, and she's like, Dad, stop.
You could say it's an obsession.
A little bit. It really is, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah. So my number 6 is the one that is a definite spoiler to really talk about too much, so I'm not going to talk about it as that much. Going to dance.
Spoilers.
I'm going to dance around it as much as I can. But in no clear terms, my number 6 favorite villain is Kaiser Sose from The Usual Suspects.
He was also one of my honorables.
Okay.
He was off and on. I took him off the list just because of the spoiler.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I thought about that, but I struggled with it because it's one of those movies that I remember my parents didn't introduce me to it. Like, I kind of found it on my own as I was like getting into movies and watching a lot of like the classics on my own time. And it just kind of blew me away. Like, I didn't know movies could be this good, that endings could be this good. And so it's always stuck with me, and I kind of loved it as soon as I saw it. And so Kaiser Sose as a character, he's like one of the most infamous crime lords in all of film history. Like, everybody is that you kind of may have heard about him. You hear people make jokes about Kaiser Sose and stuff, but it's kind of reached a mythical status, I guess. He has reached like a mythical status. And I really like the movie, The Usual Suspects, because the team of criminals that are all working together are very satisfying to watch. And especially the characters that Gabriel Byrne and Kevin Spacey play, and how they relate to Kaiser Sose as the villain, or the crime lord that everybody's talking about. So because you don't know a whole lot about him, and you don't even really know what he looks like, but so your impression is that he's just this vicious, formidable criminal. And then as time goes on, the overall con that occurs is just one of my favorite mysteries of film history. So Kaiser Sose, that's my number 6.
Yep. That's a great number 6. You know what? I'm glad that he's on your list. I had a feeling he would be, because he was not on mine. But I was like, he's a villain. If you're going to have an episode about villains, he's one of those you can't not talk about. He has to show up somewhere.
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing him up. I figured with one super spoiler on my list already, I was like, I would feel bad, which is why Kaiser's not on my list, and why another villain that I love is not on my list. Because it was like, too many spoilers.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna lie, pretty confident the other one is going to be on your list as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Possibly.
We'll see.
All right. 6, right?
Yeah.
My number 6 is one of those times where an actor who you have kind of grown to love based on a certain couple movies where they're a genuinely or generally good guy, maybe a bit of an asshole, but they're still like a good guy. He had just done a movie which is still to this day one of the most like uplifting, inspirational films of all time, and then he followed it up by playing one of the most evil villains on screen, in my opinion. He's just so hard to watch.
Yeah.
But he's so good. So when I was a kid, well, younger, I remember watching Remember the Titans and being like, man, I freaking love Denzel Washington. Then I saw Glory, and I love Denzel in Glory because he's just so captivating. He's so intense, and he's so good. I was like, I love Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
And then my dad was like, hey, we should watch this movie where he plays a corrupt cop. And I was like, yeah, Denzel Washington. So Detective Harris from Training Day is my number 6, because if you ever want to watch a movie, and I know corrupt cops has been a pretty common style in a lot of action dramas, and some are better than others. They're all effective.
Right.
But Denzel Washington as Harris is so brutal.
Yeah.
He there's no second thought to it. He smiles as he murders people. He smiles as he like basically tortures people, and then he just kind of moves on with his day. Frightening.
Yeah.
You know, like he is honestly, he's one of those guys where I'm like, he might be one of the most like, he's one of those villains to me where I feel other actors, when they prepare for a villainous role, they should watch him in this to get a sense of the, like, where do I need to go to achieve the effect? Because Denzel hits every note.
Yeah.
So Detective Harris from Training Day, Denzel Washington, God damn.
Yeah, I rewatched that this week as well because he was so close to being on my list. I think he was number 2 or 3 in my honorable mentions. Yeah, incredibly effective, and it's one of those movies that is very, like you said, there are a lot of movies that have kind of corrupt cop as an angle. It's kind of an easy thing to be like, oh, you're supposed to uphold the law, but you're not. But Training Day just takes it so much further, where it's like, I didn't have any idea that it could be this serious or this bad, and he just goes the extra mile to be a great villain.
And it's a brutal film, and it's honestly, it's just such a great movie all around. Everyone in it is amazing. When I rewatched it this week, I don't know why I always forget this or underestimate it, but that movie's like exhausting to watch.
It's true. It's kind of just, it just keeps going, and it's not like crazy long, but it feels really, really long.
And then when it ends, you are just left with like, oh my God, I need to breathe. Like, it is goddamn.
It's like you've been in a very long day shift with like the worst shift ever,
which is what the movie is.
Yeah.
So he's my number 6. He's just, that character has always stuck with me. He's one of those, when I think of movie bad guys, he's one of the first ones that pops in my head because he's just so effective.
Yeah.
And plus, it's awesome when actors break their casting tropes and are like, oh, you families gathered around the TV to celebrate my character.
Yeah.
Let's watch them gather together and watch this guy.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I really like when actors do that, especially when they're as talented as Denzel, one of the best of all time. So
yep,
it's great. So my number 5 is a horror movie villain, and maybe not one of the most obvious ones, but one of my favorites for the more planned or cerebral side. We've talked about it quite a bit, how I'm a fan of this series. My number 5 is John Kramer, or Jigsaw, from the movie Saw.
You know, I'm kind of shocked he's this low on your list.
It's true. I struggled with placing him, but I'm very confident in my top 5. So, or top 4, I guess. This is number 5. So he just kind of fell where he had to because it's such heavy competition. But Jigsaw is he's one of my favorite horror villains. And especially, I guess, partly because he never directly kills anyone. He's not a murderer. He definitely kidnaps people or is responsible for conspiracy to kidnap people, I guess you could say. But my favorite thing about him is he has very clear values and very clear principles that are so well defined. He finds people who are wasting their life, and he feels like life is a precious gift and you shouldn't do that because he himself has a terminal illness. He's dying and he feels like it's being stolen from him. So these people who are healthy, they should certainly appreciate their life, and they're not. And so he kidnaps them, or has other people kidnap them for him. And then once he has their undivided attention, which is the best part, he describes to them their mistakes and says, you're doing all of these things wrong, or you're a total piece of shit and you need to get your shit together. And then he gives them the opportunity to return to life and have a new appreciation to be alive. And that's really beautiful. And I think it's a great thing for a villain to have.
I can't believe you just said it's really beautiful. Because here I am thinking, I'm replaying the games that he forces people to play.
Yeah.
Unless they just accept death and let it happen. But I'm like, people's limbs get sawed in half. They get sawed off. There's needle baths, essentially. There's razor blade boxes.
Yeah. It's certainly not beautiful. I was being facetious. But it's like...
What...
You go.
Go ahead. Okay. I was going to say, if they make it out, they definitely don't make it out unscathed. Everyone comes out missing something or just completely broken as a human.
And he's certainly not a perfect, calculated villain, because there are several several plots or traps or whatever you want to call them, games that you see it and you're like, how would you possibly know to do that? Or how would you possibly try to get out of that in that way? But I try to compartmentalize it and put it in the canon of the story and not say, oh, this writer is being inconsistent because they're making a horror movie that's the 5th in the series. So the character himself obviously is a flawed person. But I think the fact that he's terminally ill and he chooses to take his frustration out on those who are who are healthy, I think that's really interesting. And there are cases, certainly, where he takes a person who was throwing their life away, doing drugs or whatever, and they stop doing that and they turn their life around and they are very grateful to him. That happens in the series. So, it's not totally beautiful, but it's at least, it's a twisted kind of morality where you can argue for it more than you can with other villains, I guess. And so it's
he's definitely a fantastic villain because he never is the one that directly takes a life, but at the same time, you always view him as the murderer,
right?
Or a murderer. It's weird, but it kind of makes sense, I guess. No, he's a great villain. I really do like Jigsaw. I will never forget that first movie, watching that in the theater and just being like, what is this? This is so weird. And then the big reveal, and you're like, holy shit, that might be one of the best twists I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Like, I know people who hate the whole series, but they give a lot of credit to the twist just because it's like, there was never even a thought of like, could that be? It just didn't, there was no realm for it. It was great. Yeah. Jigsaw's a fun villain. That series is unique.
Yeah. All of the movies, I guess, together, they have their ups and downs. Some are great, some are not so great. But I do think the series is carried just on the quality of the villain and the principles or the reason that he's doing what he's doing. I think that is the entire reason they're allowed to make as many movies as they've made.
Yeah.
His like sick ingenuity is fascinating to watch. Like you always want to see what kind of game has he come up with. This like weird mastermind who's thought of every angle and is he's in complete control of the situation, and he just makes sure that you follow the rules. Like that's like his whole thing. So yeah, Jigsaw, he's great. Whether the movies are all great or not, he's just a classic great villain.
Yep. He's a good pick, sir. All right. My number 5 is one that I originally just assumed would be higher on my list, but when I was working on like my top 3, it's like, oh, he got bumped. And then I was like, oh, I got to put this guy at number 4. So he got bumped down. I was like, all right, I can't afford to drop this guy anymore.
Sounds like my number 5.
My number 5, for those that know me well, have probably been wondering when I'm going to mention this dude. I'll mention him now. This trilogy is one of the most, especially the first installment, is one of the most like significant films for my movie loving development. I've talked about it several times. I've got little collectibles of it and all that. Anyways, this villain is so unique to me. So my number 5 is Agent Smith from The Matrix.
Yeah.
I love this guy. He's another one of those. I can quote a lot of his lines. I get excited when he's on the screen.
Yeah.
His whole demeanor, his confidence, everything about him is so great. And then the cherry on the top is that he's a computer program. He's not an actual human. But I think he's a lot more effective of a machine villain than hot take than even like the Terminators.
Yeah.
So I
would agree.
Just because his way of moving throughout the world is pretty sinister. He's able to like possess people who are still in the Matrix and turn them into villains. My daughter, when she watched the Matrix, she asked me to clarify that to her because, Neo's running through the streets and people with grocery bags are turning into the agents. She's like, wait a minute. I'm like, this is what they do.
Yeah.
She goes, so what happens when they shoot the person? I go, well, the machine leaves, but the body stays dead. And she's like, that's wrong, Dad. It's like, that's the bad guys.
Yeah.
This is what they do.
Yeah. And that
Agent Smith.
It's such a unique world and unique idea that those people they're inhabiting aren't real either. They're just parts of the program. And so they can move throughout the whole system at their own will because he's within that system. It's like they have omnipotent power almost to the extent of Neo, who's like becoming outside the system. But yeah, huge props.
Yeah, I love Agent Smith. And I'll never forget, my brother did tell me before we saw it, he was like, you're going to love this guy. And there's so many times, like, no offense to the MCU or Thanos, I'm not going to lie. The first time I ever heard Thanos say, I am inevitable.
Yeah.
Immediately I was like, the train scene in The Matrix. Like, that was the first time I've ever heard the word inevitable really get focused on.
Yeah.
And so every time a movie will have that word in it, immediately I hear Agent Smith talking to Neo. Like, this is just I should probably tell my brain to stop doing that, but I always think of Agent Smith.
Well, and the way Hugo Weaving plays that character, his speech pattern and everything is so unique and distinct that Mr. Smith and the way Hugo Weaving does it is unique. And you can't hear any line and not think of the way he says Mr. Anderson. Like he's just the coolest villain.
He's so cool. Yeah, I love Agent Smith. Just, God damn it, love Agent Smith.
I had the hardest time not putting him on my list. Hot take, he's not on my list. It should be. I have no excuse.
I'm not surprised by that. I was like, I bet Jake will not have him because he's going to probably pop another couple in there.
Yeah.
And you did. So.
Yeah, I had to. He's so obvious, though. Definitely one that you can't avoid not mentioning. He's incredible. Part of the reason I couldn't put him in there is because I had to put my number 4 in there, which is probably the most obvious one on my list. And even though we have talked about probably at this point not really being a fan of this series, this villain and its impact on the world, impact on my life, impact on my childhood is undeniable, even to this day.
Bella?
Not Bella again.
She was a joke, man. She was a joke.
She is a joke. How terrible she is as a joke. Go watch the Twilight episode. We're not talking about Twilight. My number 4 is Darth Vader from Star Wars.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now. He's not on my list at all.
Wow. Hot take. Yeah, I considered leaving him off. I considered it because, as we've talked about in our Twilight not our Twilight episode. Our Twilight episode is long, but it's not as long as our Star Wars episode. We talked about in the Star Wars episode, we loved Star Wars as kids. We loved the original trilogy for a lot of reasons. But over time, it's unraveled itself. And that was a big contributor to my hesitation to put him on my list because I'm not as massive a fan as I used to be. But I do still love that original trilogy. And I do still love, and I'm still emotionally impacted at the beginning of A New Hope when the door blasts open and he walks out through the smoke.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's his physical presence is terrifying. The voice from James Earl Jones is incredible. And just everything about him is great in those first 3 movies. Even though they tried to undermine him and destroy him in subsequent edits of those movies and in subsequent prequels that make him a little child yelling yippee.
Hating sand.
Yeah, being a big fat crybaby. If you remove all of the negativity and just focus on what I love, he's still great. And he still stands up as one of the most formidable, incredible villains of all time. Just his physicality and the way that he is choking that guy in the air, just like lifting him off the ground. And then right after that, he's choking a guy without even like touching him, just in that like boardroom scene. It just sets up his extreme power and ability and scariness and his look and everything. It's so well done. And I think Darth Vader, honestly, is probably one of a couple main contributors to the entire billion-dollar franchise, billions of dollars of franchise that Star Wars has become. Without him and without that, I don't think it would be what it is. So you have to put Darth Vader in the conversation for sure.
Definitely in the conversation. He was one, though, I kind of knew right off the bat that I wasn't going to have him on my list. Mm-hmm. Because of one very specific reason, and I'm sure you've kind of noticed the pattern with my list so far, or maybe. Mm-hmm. My villains are all very calculated. They're plotters. Yeah. They have a lot. It's just, and they're not afraid to pull the trigger. They embrace this life. And Vader, to me, is not actually the one that plots.
Yeah.
and he's not the mastermind. And that was the biggest thing to me, where I was like, I don't think I'm going to have him on the list, because he just doesn't. He doesn't plan any of this. He just kind of like, oh crap, now we got to go here. All right, I'm going to send you guys there. But he is a great villain. I do love Vader a ton. You know, he's, to call him iconic is almost like an understatement. It really is. I mean, he's up there.
Yeah, I would say simply from visuals and character, understanding who he is as quickly as you do, could be the most iconic villain or per character. Most iconic film character of all time. But no, what you're saying is totally true. He did stand out to me as very different from the rest of the characters on my list, the rest of the villains on my list, in the sense that he's not a complete villain. He has a character arc. He has a redemption arc through the original trilogy where he ends up redeeming himself. And so he's not 100% committed to that lifestyle or personality or whatever, nefariousness. So yeah, a little bit sketch, a little bit not completely a villain for sure.
No, but he's still villainous. I mean, he spends the better part of 3 movies hunting and killing.
Yeah.
A lot more of his own crew than like the rebels, but
yes,
like direct killing. So if you work for Vader, good luck.
Yeah. Well, it's how he commands the fear.
Yeah. No, that is a good point. It's a good pick. I was like, he's probably not going to be on my list, although he's made such a huge impact on my movie loving life. I was like, I don't think he's going to be on the list. I just don't see him hitching a ride there, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
Go listen to our Star Wars episodes. It's long, it's older, and it's funny because we rant like you have not heard us rant before.
Yeah. We'll go through all 13 movies or whatever it is. 11 movies.
It's crazy. My number 4 was our first crossover, Hans Gruber.
Okay.
Dude, this guy, he's one of those bad guys, one of those characters when you're young and you're first starting to get into film and your love for like action movies or whatever characters. I will never forget being just floored by Hans Gruber. His whole demeanor is very like, he does command authority. He shows up on screen, and compared to everyone around him, you know, like that's the guy.
Yeah.
He's the one. Everyone else can get shot and dropped. No one cares.
Right.
He's the dude. And I'll never forget his opening monologue after they shoot up the ceiling and he's talking to the whole
ladies and
everyone that works there. Yep. I did that monologue for a drama class back in high school because it's just so good.
Yeah.
But I've said it a couple times now. The part to me that made me just truly love this character and fall into this is kind of what villains should be. That like, was he pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
When he has the boss in the room.
Yeah.
And the dude's like, I'm telling you, I don't have the codes. You're just going to have to kill me. Okay. And he blows his head off.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that scene and just being like, what? They can actually just kill like an important character?
Yeah.
Not even care? It blew the doors open on what I thought Hollywood writers were allowed to do when they wrote these kinds of characters. Because a lot of the time the villains in older films, they do have limitations. They are like, you can't, we're not going to go that far. We can't. And to me, Hans Gruber was like the one that I personally saw that just kind of broke that mold. So Hans Gruber, I mean, the monologues.
Yeah.
The monologues are so good.
Yeah.
You brought up when he has to like do the whole facade of being a worker there when he sees John for the first time and how quick he can like jump into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then his flaw though is he kind of drops the act a little too early. He does the thing where a lot of villains tend to do where they get a little too confident.
Yeah.
Where they're like, everything's worked great for me so far, so I assume the rest will work just as well. And it's whenever they hit that assumption that you're like, oh, your plan's about to get foiled.
Yeah, he has a little bit of hubris when he gets a little bit of an upper hand and plays his cards too much. That's for sure.
But Hans Gruber, he's just...
Yeah.
He's up there for me.
Yeah. And he's got such a great like attitude. Like I mentioned, he's having a good time. He enjoys like this lifestyle, I think. And so when he talks about, he like sees the boss, Mr. Takagi, he has like notices his suit. He's like, oh yeah, that's a great suit. I hear Arafat buys his there. And when he's like listing all of their like demands to the police, and he's just like listing all these like weird splinter terrorist groups, and then his guys are like, who's that? What are you talking about? And he's like, I read an article in Forbes. He's like just such a cool guy.
Yeah, he's the kind of villain when you're a kid and you're like playing in your room, or at least for me, pretending to put on like your little personal plays or whatever. Mm-hmm. Every time that I'd be like thinking of a bad guy, I thought Hans Gruber. Mm-hmm. He was the top tier for me as a kid. Just, he's so cool. He's so in command. I mean, his demeanor, the authority is like, yeah, this is what a villain is. He's just all of it. He's so good.
Yeah.
he's so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
He's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, incredibly charismatic. That's one of my favorite things about a villain is that they're charismatic and they're likable, and and you understand why they get in the positions that they do.
Right.
People follow them.
Yep. So number 4, Hans Gruber.
Great one.
He's just so good.
My number 3 is the one that I put here because I am sure you put the mirror version of it on your list. So my number 3 is Arthur Fleck from Joker, the movie Joker, played by Joaquin Phoenix. I'm sure everyone's first question is going to be, why Arthur Fleck and not Heath Ledger's Joker? It's because I am 1,000% sure he's on your list, and this is my cheat.
This is your cheat.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk Arthur Fleck.
Yeah,
because Arthur Fleck is not on my list.
Nice. Yeah, I'm not saying that Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is better than Heath Ledger's Joker. I'm not saying that. Heath Ledger's Joker is incredible and amazing, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. And it just stands the test of time. But I think that art tends to build on itself, and there's something about the way Joaquin Phoenix plays this character that is like extremely real. It's like hyper realistic. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing that I gravitate to about it, where he's a character that is tragic. Like that's the thing that stands out about the way AFI defined a villain. One of the most tragic villains on the list is Joker from Joker. Like the way that he has his descent into madness, essentially, and the things that cause it. There are things that are not inside of his control, like his own family history, his own mental health, the city around him, the decisions of others, his own psychosis, and whether he chooses to believe things that aren't real or not, whether they just happen to him and he lives with it. He can't even control his own physical body from laughing. It very much feels like that would drive you to madness. And so I think seeing him go down that path in such a real and terrifying way is so fascinating. And then once he chooses to accept it and embrace it and all of that, it's extremely interesting, extremely exciting. And he's partly kind of, his criminality starts sort of accidentally, and his inspiration of the entire movement of people in the city kind of adopting the Joker mess and mentality is basically unintentional. Like, he's just kind of a guy who is in a weird situation. But because he gets pushed more and more to the edge, and he really just eventually embraces it, it's one of the most, like, honestly incredible movies that I've ever seen. And it's weird to say about a movie that came out 2 years ago, but I think it's because art
true
builds upon itself, and these things are great now because of things that were done 10 years ago and 20 years ago and 30 years ago. Like, these villains have broken the mold so often that this is just the next version of it. And I think it's one of the best versions of it. And
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's especially interesting and exciting to me, and I'm sure to you too, that the fact that it's even peripherally related to comic books, and my favorite comic books especially, is just unbelievable, incredible, and I love it so much.
Yeah, I have great respect for Joaquin Phoenix, Todd Phillips, that whole crew, with how they approach that story, that movie. Not just for my comic book love or love for that character, but just the whole approach of why that movie got made in the first place was, I definitely, whenever anything is a spotlight on the importance of, like, mental health and what we as a society should probably really be paying attention to, and not just kicking to the side or thinking it's all taboo. The fact that they use all this mental health awareness kind of stuff with some other things sprinkled into it, and they use the Joker as the character to bring all of that to the forefront and kind of force everyone to be like, oh, because it's not an entertaining movie.
Right.
That is a rough movie to watch. It's not one that I'm like, I'm going to sit down and watch Joker.
Right.
It's usually like, I'm going to watch it for the performance. I'm going to, like, I really want to watch it. It's just a great movie. Amazing film. I agree with you. It's one of the most impactful films I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
It's one of those, like, telling people about it, because I had a lot of people when it came out, that everyone knew I was seeing it immediately. And I had a lot of people asking me, like, how was it? Like, what is it like? And I tell everyone, you're going to need something real polar opposite of it when it finishes.
Yeah.
You're going to need to, like, interact with people. You might even need a hug at the end of this movie. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Whatever positive injection you can get, like healthy positive injection, you need to have that on standby for these end credits. Joaquin Phoenix, his approach to Joker, his version of Joker, I love. It's so well done. It's so real. It's powerful. It's a genuinely powerful version of Joker. It's funny saying that, because as a Joker fan, and through all the live action iterations of him, they're all different.
Yeah.
But they're all, you can see all the, like, we have to do these few things, and we'll just kind of sprinkle our own shit onto, like, around those. But what I really loved about how Joaquin Phoenix did it was, you got a great sense of kind of like this huge blend of all the Jokers. And then he kind of had put his own little spin on it. But I thought that was really cool. I felt that was a nice nod to all the previous actors. This kind of role.
Yeah.
In reality, and then it's a hypothetical question. Shut the fuck up. I try to put myself in these kinds of shoes where, if you were an actor and you were told, we want you cast as Joker or cast as, we'll even go with Batman or any of these like crazy iconic roles.
Right.
How do you even begin to think, how am I going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Because immediately you are put up, the pressure on you is, it's got to be too much.
Yeah.
Because of the expectation from a global standpoint.
Right.
Like, people are expecting very specific things from you.
Right.
If you don't do these very specific things, you will be despised.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it's kind of like the thing. It's kind of like the thing, you know, when there are like murder trials and they move the trial out of the county or out of the state because everybody has already heard about it and they have formed their own opinion about it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's impossible to play the Joker without thinking about all of the great ones who have done Joker so far. And same with all those other characters you mentioned. And so it kind of takes a very motivated or very calculated artist to just block out that noise and say, I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah.
I'm going to do all the things that it needs to be for what this version is. This version is already different because it's even more grounded in reality than Nolan did, which is kind of the first time Joker was grounded in reality. And so let's take it to the extreme of grounding it in reality. But yeah, it's undeniable. It's relating them.
He's so good. He really is just so good. There are times I think we know each other too well.
Is that you wanted to transition to your number 3, which is related?
No, my number 3 is not related.
I don't know what you're talking about then.
No, I was saying like spoiler, Heath Ledger's Joker will be showing up in a little bit. Right. Right. I did have that thought of like, I could see Jake not putting him on his list, but replacing him with Joaquin Phoenix's as a like, it's still Joker.
Mm-hmm.
But this way we can cheat the system and have 2 Jokers on 2 lists, but it's the same character. Like, I thought I could see Jake trying to like hit some loopholes.
Yep.
Not that our rules are airtight.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, that's exactly what happened, and that's hilarious. Obviously we both know we're huge fans of Batman and huge fans of Joker in general. So need to cover our bases. Need to get them both out there.
Right. And that's fair.
Yeah.
Especially because I love Joaquin Phoenix's Joker so much.
Like everything
I love his characters.
Everything about his performance is incredible to watch. Like it's just
he
hits this like superhuman acting ability and it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. And I love what he does with that character so much. I love that movie so much. I hope all the rumors of a sequel are false because
it'd be weird.
There is no way you can make that version of Joker its own franchise. Without completely dismissing and pissing on everything that made that first one great.
Yeah.
So that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, I think the only way you could do it is if you did what people have said, which is that Joker inspires the real Joker, and let's make a movie about that real Joker, referencing this movie, making it canon to a new Batman Joker universe kind of thing.
Right. But yeah. Good pick, sir.
Thank you.
Good pick. My number 3. So my 3, 2, 1. Very obvious for me. There was no way of getting around these 3 at all. Period. I did try to get around my number 3 when I told you, like, I think I'll challenge myself and not have horror movie villains. And then you were like, but they're great. And I went, you're right. So fuck my idea.
It honestly would have been easier if we had narrowed down the options and be like, okay, we're not doing certain kinds of villains because we'll save that for later. Opening it up to any villain in any category was very difficult.
A bit rough.
Yeah.
A bit rough. So my number 3 is my all-time favorite horror franchise villain, the great, the unkillable Michael Myers.
Yep.
God damn it, I love this guy.
Yeah.
It's funny. So I went and saw a movie today, and they played the Halloween Kills trailer, and there's a line in the trailer where, and they've said it in previous installments, where they're like, he's the embodiment of evil, he's the essence of evil, he just is pure evil, and that's why I love him. He doesn't talk. There is no compromising. There is no negotiating. There's nothing. He is simply there to kill. He's there to just destroy. That is terrifying. There's no, I mean, other killers will like conversate, and a couple of them I absolutely love. I'll be talking about them shortly. But Michael Myers is on. Yeah. Okay. So like Freddy doesn't, or not Freddy, sorry. Jason doesn't talk.
Yeah.
But I think what kind of knocks Jason down is everyone gets so distracted with the camp kind of side stories of like, you hear Friday the 13th, people usually jump to the machete and boobs and sex.
Yeah.
Like the horror franchise of Friday the 13th really gets summed up into like, well, we know we're going to see a bunch of boobs. We're going to probably see a sex scene, and then Jason will kill him.
Yeah, not only does it take place at a camp, there is an element of campiness, which is more present there.
And, you know, Freddy, he never shuts up, actually. Freddy just constantly talks.
Yeah, running his mouth.
I love Freddy Krueger, but go listen to our horror movie episode. But Michael Myers is what sets him apart is the fact that he is truly in the horror genre. He's that villain that really is evil. Like he truly is just, no, this is what evil is. You can't talk to it. You can't do anything but try to like avoid it.
Yeah.
Just make better choices in life so that evil doesn't come knocking on your door.
Right. And he succumbed to it at such a young age. Like his backstory is simple but effective.
It's effective. Oh my God. He's like a 6-year-old boy that stabs his sister to death multiple times. It's like, and he does it without even really, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
There's no humanity to it.
No humanity behind the eyes. Yeah.
I mean, even if Michael Myers, I have this thought, if they ever made a movie where we see Michael Myers' face, like, or even if they had shown Michael's face in all the films, if they would have kept him exactly how deadpan and silent that he is, I think he'd still be crazy effective. I think he would still be just as frightening. The mask does help because it's so lifeless. But Michael Myers, he is, oh my God, I love Michael Myers. Like, he's a blast to watch.
He's a great embodiment of one of the things I like in a villain the most is that you as an audience immediately can tell that they are an unstoppable force, whether they're extremely strong or extremely brilliant and they've planned everything out to a T, you can't stop them, or just like Michael Myers, he's unstoppable, unkillable. He doesn't need to run in order to get you. He's going to get you anyway. He is just going to, he's an unstoppable force of death and mayhem. And it seems like something that would have fallen away over time. Like, oh, modern audiences are not that interested in this guy. That was scary in the 70s, but it's not scary now. No, it still works perfectly well.
Right. They played the trailer today. That trailer ends with a close-up of Michael's face. like The Mask.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people in the theater like, oh, man. Because they show a couple kills in that trailer that I was like, whoa, shit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Michael Myers, he's so effective as a villain.
Mm-hmm.
He is an exception to my plotting, very
Mm-hmm.
intelligent villain. But where he lacks in the plotting and the schemes, he makes up for in just the, like, there's no spectacle.
Yeah.
He's just going to kill you.
Right.
He's just going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's with a knife, a hammer, pickaxe, and the new one, apparently.
Yeah. And that's even, I think it works well for it to be that way because it's a different kind of scariness. It's not planned out. He doesn't have anything against you. It's just chaos. It's a random occurrence where you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Oh, I stumbled across this lady. I'm going to go into her house. I'm going to take her knife. I'm going to kill her, walk out. Like, you're there.
Oh,
you're in the way.
I'm walking down the street and I happen to see you cross your window.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm just going to kill you now.
There's a person. I can kill them.
Yeah, no explanation. There's no known motivation except for he's just evil.
Yeah, just the worst.
That's frightening. God, he's so awesome.
Yeah, that was another one that I was 100% confident would be on your list. He just had to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my number 2 is like Mike Myers. I think I call him Mike Myers, Michael Myers. It's funny to call him Mike Myers because I think of Wayne's World.
Right.
But a lot like Michael Myers, we talked about, the best villains are quiet and unstoppable forces. My number 2 is a lot like that. My number 2 is Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, he is.
And
not a crossover, but
okay. Yeah,
he was going to get talked about whether he was on your list or not.
Yeah, and we talked about him in the drama episode or the Western episode. I don't recall. It's been a while. It's been a while since we brought him up. But I think
we talked about him in the or in the drama.
I think you might be right.
I think he was on your drama list, right?
Yeah. So No Country for Old Men is like, go see No Country for Old Men. I think I mentioned in that episode, when I first saw it, I didn't really care for it because I don't know, it just wasn't the right time for me to see it. But when I saw it later, I was like, oh my God, this movie is amazing. Everything's about it's amazing. I'm obsessed with it. I love it. And the villain, while being a very small part of the screen time of that movie, is a huge part of the effect of that movie, I guess.
Yeah.
He's like, he is this quiet character that kills people in an uncommon way. I think that's another interesting thing about him, is that he has this tool connected to a tank of air, compressed air, that he uses. That's a cattle killer thing that he just walks up to people and plunges them in the face with it. And is so heartless and cold about it. Like, just stand there, just stand still. And they're like, what's going on? And he's like, and you're dead. He's just so scary. And he's, again, he's an unstoppable force because he's not concerned about getting arrested. He knows that's like the first thing that happens to him. He gets arrested, but he knows at any time I can escape. I'm just, I'll do whatever I need to do. And so when he does choke a policeman to death on the floor with his handcuffs, it's one of the most violent, non-bloody scenes I've ever seen.
The look on his face is one of those looks that's like permanently etched into my memory bank of the face of insanity.
Yeah.
It's frightening. It's so scary.
Yeah. And so he had to be on my list because the few scenes he has are incredible. His like main defining character scene is the one that you actually get a little bit of insight into him. He does talk to like the groceries or the convenience store gas station clerk.
Yeah.
And makes him flip the coin and doesn't tell him what he's flipping for, except that he's flipping for everything. And And just the coin toss scene and how he plays it is so incredible. And the way that he like talks to people, the way he's like calls him friendo, and he's such a powerful character, and he's one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah, he's intense. He leaves his mark, and I think that's also a big thing. Is like when you're making villains, and I think this really started happening in the 80s and just kind of kept getting built up on throughout time, for the most part. Maybe Marvel should have taken this note when they wrote a lot of their villains, is like, you need to make a villain that any audience of any generation could watch the movie, and that villain is going to affect them.
Right.
Like, they'll walk away and just be like, oh. I will say, our list, Jake, have villains that they're memorable. They leave lasting impressions.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the big mark of a great villain, is when you leave that theater, when the end credits roll, first things that people will talk about is that villain. That villain's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And there's a couple of ways you can go about that effect, I think. One, and we see both the examples throughout our list, which is have the character be completely unknown, you don't know their motivation, you don't know what they're doing, there's a scary force for darkness kind of thing. Or the other way, and I think the theme that I kind of had through my list is that these characters have clear motivations, clear rules that they live by. They have principles that they abide by, and from their perspective, in a lot of cases, they're also the hero, where they're doing what they believe in. They're acting it out as the best they can. And I wouldn't say that Anton Chigurh is a hero from his perspective, but he certainly has. Murphy, what are you doing? Stop tearing up this book. You're being noisy. I'm sure Dustin can hear you.
I can.
I was like, this is too much. I can't even talk. Okay. But I think Anton Chigurh is he still has that not morality, but a clear, principled stance where you get an idea of he has an appreciation for chaos, that life just brings you what it brings you. And he says, like, he's here the same reason that this coin is here, the same reason that anything else is here. Like, this coin, who was minted 20 something years ago, is here at this moment. The same reason I'm here at this moment, because people made decisions and things happen, and it's inevitable in this certain way. And I think that's really, really interesting. And he just has a clear set of ideals, basically. And he gives people advice in certain situations. He talks to, I think, Llewellyn's wife, and he's like, you should just admit your situation. There's more dignity in that. Like, this is a shit situation. Accept it.
Right.
And it is what it is.
Yeah, he's a very effective villain. I don't want to say too much of him, just because his last scene is also a great one to me, although it's a very, like, odd kind of scene.
Yeah.
But I love it just because of how he plays that whole character. He's so good. Well, my number 2 is not the Joker.
Okay. Yeah.
My number 2 is arguably, you said Vader is like the iconic villain or Hollywood character kind of thing. My number 2, I would say, is probably the one that would actually give Vader the run for the money when it comes to iconic, that kind of status. My number 2 is Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, what is there to say? From the get-go, when you first meet Hannibal, his first conversation with Clarice, from that moment on, he is everything villains should be.
Right.
But he does it with class, which is what makes him so frightening. Because he's very concerned of being polite, even though he consumes human flesh. But he's even polite when he eats flesh. It's fucked up.
Right. Yeah, he wants to do it in a demure way and choose the right pairing of wine with it and all this very upsetting things.
But then you get to see him just allow himself to go full evil or sadistic. You can see that side of him where even though he is very prim and proper, filleting an officer and hanging him on a cage and gutting him, that's not so polite, but wearing a guy's face. Right. But Hannibal Lecter, now I've said this in our thriller episode because this is kind of my twofer, like yours was with The Departed. The combination of Hannibal Lecter, who is one of the most frightening characters put on screen, most effective villains.
Yeah.
Talk about the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
But then you meet Buffalo Bill, and Buffalo Bill gives you the same heebie-jeebies, but instead of being prim and proper, now it's very violent. It's very reminiscent of real serial killers that we have grown to learn about and know have existed. So to see them get personified so well in Buffalo Bill, it's tough for me to actually figure out which one frightens me more in that story. And I am specifically talking Silence of the Lambs. Now, Hannibal Lecter is amazing in all of the films that he's in, but specifically Silence of the Lambs is where he shines.
Right.
Brian De Palma, they tapped into something so unique and stunning and just, God damn it. Hannibal Lecter is he's too good of a villain. He really is too good. And he does most of it behind bars.
Right.
But he's very calculated. He's very plot oriented. He knows everyone's moves. He knows exactly who you are, probably better than you know yourself, to the point where he knows what you'll be doing, not in the immediate future, but a little ways down the road, he knows what you're going to end up doing. Yeah. And that's scary.
Very calculated. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that he is one of the most iconic movie characters from any perspective, because everybody remembers Silence of the Lambs for Hannibal Lecter, even though he is behind bars for most of the movie, and you go into it with Buffalo Bill being the actual villain. He's just a consultant, but he overshadows Buffalo Bill's terrible serial killerness because he's just so creepy and so completely perfect.
He's completely engrossing and captivating. And when he's on the screen, you don't look away. You want to, especially with those close-ups. And that's... I love this decision when they made Silence of the Lambs. A lot of it, when Clarice is on screen, when she is interacting with another character, they do a close-up of that character so that you are put in Clarice's shoes. And
face
so
to face.
Every time Hannibal is making eye contact with you, and to this day, you can still watch it and be like, ugh.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at your eyes. I don't, because there's nothing there. Ugh.
Yeah.
But Hannibal Lecter, he was one that I was like, absolutely Hannibal's on my list. And I get the twofer because I got Buffalo Bill as well, who is just so gross and frightening, and it's
No, that's a great pick. He certainly deserves to be mentioned I didn't have him on there, but you can't avoid Hannibal Lecter. He's so great.
Yeah.
So my number one.
All right.
Number one. Number one favorite villain of all time for now, until my list changes. Honestly, kind of surprised me that it ended up at the top. As I was moving things around, this one kind of just floated its way to the top and it stayed there. And I think a large reason is because I enjoy this character for so many different reasons. It's simultaneously terrifying but you also laugh and it's entertaining and fun. So my number one is Colonel Hans Landa, the Jew hunter from Inglourious Bastards.
I knew it. I freaking knew it. I knew he was on your list. I knew it.
He had to be.
Absolutely knew he was on your list.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very much like Star Wars. The opening of this movie is the most perfect introduction to the villain first thing. That opening is one of my favorite openings of all time. One of the most exciting experiences seeing for the first time in the theater, but also every time I see it at home. It sucks you in so perfectly. Hans Landa as a character is like, he's oddly charming and charismatic. Like, you can tell he's kind of trying to disarm you, but he also doesn't have to disarm you because he's powerful and holds this like authority that he can just have your entire world ruined at any given moment. I mean, that's partly backed by this whole Nazi army behind him, but he as a character is that he's charming and charismatic and fun in a kind of a weird way. He's delightfully eccentric, which is one of my favorite things when he gets excited and he's like, I love rumors, or that his famous line, obviously, that's a bingo.
That's a bingo.
He's just, the way Christoph Waltz plays him is such a great introduction. I also love that it's the first movie I ever saw of Christoph Waltz. I think that helps always when you don't come into it with an expectation on the actor. You can just take in the character as he is. That helps for sure. But the most important thing about Hans Landa, I think, is that he's shrewd. He's clearly smarter than everybody else in the room. And he can flip a switch at any given time and get very serious and drop the charismatic act and become very dangerous, as he does at the end of the conversation with the milk farmer. He's like, oh, we're buddy-buddy. That we're just at your house. I enjoy your milk. This is great. You're hiding Jews under your basement, aren't you? And point to me where they are. So it just is so complete of a character that that's, I think, why he ended up towards the top. And kind of like No Country for Old Men, he's not in it very much. He's in the very beginning, then there's a big gap until he's in it again. And
he shows up periodically, and then as the climax of the film gets closer, he shows up a little more because he ends up being a part of all that. But
yeah,
man,
when he shows up the second time at the restaurant with Shoshana, and it's we talked about this in our Tarantino episode. This is a great episode for referencing earlier episodes. If you missed any of those,
it is.
Go listen to our Tarantino episode because we do dissect the entire movie. But when she goes to lunch with the Nazis, it's already tense because Shoshana, a Jewish girl, is having lunch with these Nazis. But they're,
it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
You get fairly comfortable over time, and then when Hans Landa comes in, you immediately know their relationship. When he orders milk for her, you're like, there's no way he doesn't know. There's no way he doesn't know that she's the girl from the milk farm. And
goosebumps. And every time I get those goosebumps.
He's so charming and like polite with her, but also very controlling, and he won't let her eat her like food until she gets the cream on her like
wait for
dessert.
The cream.
Yeah. And so he's very harsh and controlling at the same time. It's incredible. And it's also interesting to me that he's not a total idealist. Like, he's not a Nazi because he completely agrees with like the National Socialist Party and their goals and he doesn't believe in the 1,000-Year Reich necessarily. he's willing to drop that in order to sell out his Hitler and gain his own
he's out
benefit.
for personal gain. So when an opportunity for a better opportunity might present itself, he's going to take advantage of that. But until said opportunity, he will go full force with what he is currently doing.
Yeah.
So it's like mercenary style, but
yeah, you get the idea that
he wears the SS logo.
He has his very high rank and very illustrious title as the Jew hunter because he's very good at it, but he also still maintains his own autonomy and he's willing to scheme his way into his own benefit, and he's not locked into any given thing, and I think that gives him a lot of range to play with, and so he's an interesting arc for sure.
I will never forget watching that movie the first time in the theater. That opening scene, and just immediately the whole theater was like on edge. And then when he orders her milk, immediately you're like, oh, fuck, he's going to shoot her right here. Like, she's dead right here.
Yeah.
And then just how that movie progresses. God, Hans Landa. Yeah, I knew. I was like, he's on Jake's list. 1,000%. I would have bet money on it. Like, there's no way Jake makes a top 10 without mentioning Hans Landa. There's no way.
You gotta have both Hanses.
Right. Much like you probably thought, well, we can't have a top 10 villain list and Dustin's not going to mention Heath Ledger's Joker, who's my number one.
Yeah.
I can't even segue into it because it's already,
Yeah, I gave it away.
But speaking of openings of movies that just leave a theater just like, what did we just watch? The opening of The Dark Knight with the Joker robbing the mob bank is still so effective.
Yeah.
So when I rewatched it, and folks, I have watched this movie so many times.
Yeah.
I have watched this trilogy so many times. Every time I put in The Dark Knight, though, it's just like it's a beam. I cannot look away. I can't do anything else. I don't talk to people when I watch this movie. I have a hard time with anything else around me. So trying to any kind of note taking, any kind of fun production tidbits, it just didn't have it. It doesn't happen when I watch The Dark Knight. It's always post.
Yeah.
But Heath Ledger's Joker he was a game changer. Nolan's trilogy is always considered as the shift in comic book adaptations or comic book movies, especially The Dark Knight. But Heath Ledger, in terms of movie villains, shifted things. He rattled everything. It's it's a shame how it all ended with him accidentally overdosing. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But when he is on screen, oh my God.
Yeah.
It is just it's unnerving watching him as the Joker. It's so fun showing my daughter. And we are planning this where we're going to watch some early funny Heath Ledger movies and then watch The Dark Knight. Because she is convinced they are not the same actor. And I'm telling you, kid, it's the same guy. But to get the full effect, you got to watch 10 Things I Hate About You or A Knight's Tale and then watch Dark Knight.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally believe it because I have the same thought often where I'm like, it just can't be the same person. It's incredible.
It just can't be Heath Ledger. So much like when I saw Inglourious Bastards that first time, just getting that effect of the movie with the whole audience was the same thing with The Dark Knight. I remember that opening ended with Joker driving off in the bus and the whole theater for the next 2.5 hours. You can't relax during that movie. You were just unnerved. You're on edge and you're what the hell? It's just, this villain is to me, he is the perfect villain. He's perfect because they spend so much time trying to tell you, the audience, and Batman and Gotham, like, yes, he's an agent of chaos and he's just letting things go. He's doing whatever he can to burn it down. But if you really watch that movie, every little thing in that film, he has planned out. He's got scripted, literally scripted. He's reading his script at the ferries at the end of the movie. Like, he has plotted everything, which makes him suddenly like, yeah, pure chaos is terrifying. But now we know he's actually very in control. And that kind of character to be in that much control, man, I love the Joker. I love the Joker so much.
Yeah, and he's also the perfect comparison for a type of villain, one of the best types of villains, which is a pairing against the hero. In order to have a good hero, it's best when the villain is complementary to them, complementary to their skill sets or their motivations, or in conflict with their beliefs or something like that. Joker is perfect for that. And also he's a little bit, the stakes are higher, where the Joker is more planned out, has the advantage in every situation, has no rules, where Batman's limited by his rules and that kind of thing. And so Batman is at an inherent disadvantage, and that makes his struggle and victory even more satisfying.
Yeah. I just, watching it, it was funny. So I specifically only was like, okay, we're just watching Dark Knight because I know Joker's on my list, but I'm just going to watch it again because I have to. It ended, and I got kind of struck with something. I immediately had to watch Dark Knight Rises because then I started thinking of Bane. And so I watched Dark Knight Rises, which one of these days or episodes we should probably do like a Dark Knight trilogy deep dive.
We should.
But
I can't believe we've gone this long without it.
I know. So I'll try to keep this minimal. But Bane, I honestly, dude, he's kind of like an underrated villain.
Yeah.
Rewatch Dark Knight Rises. Him as a villain does a lot of very precise things throughout the course of that film that are a lot more than just like, oh, he's a big murderous brute. Like he is. There's a lot more to him, and I really caught on to it this time around, or focused on it, I guess, this time around, but underrated. He's way better than I think people give him credit for.
Yeah, he was in the unenviable position of being in Joker's shadow, for sure.
Yeah.
But I do think incredible character. That was a big part of the problem for me, which is I certainly wanted to have Joker on my list, Heath Ledger's Joker. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, all of the villains, the rogue gallery of Nolan's universe are incredible. And
yeah,
Joker is obviously carries that movie, but Two-Face is incredible for his own reasons. And Ra's al Ghul in the first movie is amazing, and Scarecrow in the first movie is amazing, and Bane is amazing, and Talia is amazing. Everybody is amazing. So it was hard to like limit myself. And
right.
The way I limited myself was none of them get to be on my list.
Yeah, I can never deny the emotional like impact that Heath Ledger's Joker actually leaves. And when I say emotional impact, I'm not saying like, oh, it's so like, oh.
Yeah.
I'm saying he leaves you shook.
Yeah.
Like he makes you so physically uncomfortable. And he does it when he's talking to mobsters.
Yeah.
Like you fear for the other fellow bad guys that are around him. You probably should not put yourself in an enclosed space with this guy.
Right. But yeah, with these mobsters who normally you would be scared of them, but suddenly they're like pussycats. You're not scared of them at all.
Right.
Yeah,
So
The Dark Knight is honestly incredible. I don't know if this happens to you, but I have seen it so much. It's hugely impactful and emotional every time you watch it. It just sticks with you. It just connects with you perfectly. But then I don't watch it for a little bit, and I'm like, it can't be as good as I remember. Certainly we've moved on from it, or it's just not going to hold up the way that I thought it would. And then I watch it. I'm like, no, it's perfect. Everything about it's perfect. I can't believe I doubted it. Of course, it's perfect.
Yeah, I never doubt any of them. Yeah. The full trilogy, I never doubt it. I did see an article recently where it was like some YouTube channel was like, the Dark Knight trilogy sucks. It doesn't hold up at all. What? It's bad for these days. So I rewatched it. I rewatched it. I'm like, if you understand that this trilogy takes place in actual 2005, 2008, like if you understand the actual years, the movies hold up just fine.
Yeah.
And not just because I'm extremely biased, but The Dark Knight is a damn near perfect action drama. Like it is a movie. Yeah. That is cinema.
Yeah. One of a handful of perfect films, and just happens to be about comic book characters. It's crazy.
Right. Which is just awesome.
Yeah. All right. So that's our top 10
But
villains.
That's it. So that's our top 10 asterisks for now, because this was so hard.
Yeah. And as I'm looking at my honorable mentions, I'm like, oh, should I have put that up there? I can't believe it's just down here in the honorable mentions list. But
yeah, I wanted John Doe from 7, Norman Bates. I'm kind of shocked you didn't have Colonel Tavington on your list from The Patriot.
I do have it in my honorable mentions list.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. I was a little bummed in myself for not having Sheriff of Nottingham, another Alan Rickman brilliant villain. I know in our very first episode ever, man, this is a great segue episode for people. You should go back and listen to old episodes.
Yeah.
They're very raw, but they're fun. I know Face Off was one of my all-time favorite action films.
Yeah.
I did not have Castor Troy in my villains, although I love Castor Troy. I was bummed every time that I'd have to bump his name down. I told myself, we got plenty of room. Oh, crap, he's gone.
Yeah. 10 spots goes real quick.
It does. It does. There's so many villains.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so many.
Yeah. Well, if you think of how many movies there are, and most movies have a villain, there are so many great movies, and that ends up being because of so many great villains. Some of my honorable mentions are like Kevin Wendell Crumb from Split. Yeah. Unbelievable movie and unbelievable character. Mark Zuckerberg from The Social Network is one.
Dude, I thought of that too. I was like, he's a total villain.
But yeah, Colonel William Tavington from The Patriot for sure. Also, Brigadier General Francis Hummel from The Rock, Ed Harris's character from The Rock. He's one of those villains that the more I watch it, the more I'm like, you know what? You're not totally wrong. You're just a little bit extreme in the way you're going about it. But overall,
right? Like decent. You have a point, but your execution is very flawed.
Yeah. Could be better. You could say the same thing about Bill the Butcher, William Cutting from Gangs of New York.
Yeah.
Really, Daniel Day-Lewis, we didn't talk about him at all, but...
I can't remember his character's name, but There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked neither of us mentioned him.
Daniel Plainview.
I knew he wouldn't be on the list, but I was like, he's got to get mentioned.
Yeah, Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood. I'm an oil man. Yeah, he's just unbelievable. And then I guess I'll have to mention Louis Bloom, which is Jake Gyllenhaal's character in Nightcrawler, is a very different kind of villain that sticks with you for sure.
Yeah, he's a gross villain. He's a very gross villain.
Yeah. very different, completely separated from any sort of morality. It's crazy.
Yeah. The lengths he goes a little bit much.
Yeah.
But villains are so much fun to watch because you either love to hate the good villains. Oh, speaking of Joaquin Phoenix, him and Gladiator.
Commodore, yeah.
Like, you want him to die the entire film.
Or Commodus. I think it's Commodus.
Commodus, yeah. You want him to die because he's just so... He was like our first version of Joffrey.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, he's OG Joffrey for sure.
Yeah, which I'm kind of shocked I wasn't more prepared for Joffrey then, because I love Gladiator.
That's true.
But
well, he took what Joaquin Phoenix did and then pushed it a little bit further to make it new and fresh and even scarier. A lot further.
You should also, we brought up Gary Oldman. His character, Ivan, I'm not even going to bother with the last name, from Air Force One. He plays the Russian terrorist that hijacks Air Force One.
Yeah.
He is intense in that movie. Mm-hmm. He's also one of the great villains. Oh, that was lightning. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Did you hear it?
Yes.
Can you hear that?
It sure did.
That was like light. That wasn't even... Some of the thunder, man, the whole place will just rattle.
Yeah.
Oh, my night just got better. Woohoo! So excited. Yeah, him in Air Force One, another villain, not afraid to just pull the trigger, and he's very impulsive. Mm-hmm. So he's scary to watch in that term. Plus, if you just want great acting, watch that. The CGI at the end is like the worst you'll ever see in your life, but forgive it. It was made in 1997, so
yeah, exactly.
6, one of those. Yeah, so that's our villains list, right?
Yeah,
for now,
that's our villain list for now. I'm sure we can revisit it in the future, and there are a lot we didn't get to, so we can touch base on them. If there's a specific subcategory of villain we can really get into. But yeah, let us know what your favorite movie villain is, or your top 10 even. That's totally cool. You can comment or DM us on Facebook and Instagram at Movie Boners. Mm-hmm. You can find us on TikTok now. I'm going to post some new stuff there. Still getting used to it. Still not 100%, but it's coming. Don't worry. And yeah.
So bad at it.
We haven't mentioned it in a while, but if you want to, you can call into the show and leave a voicemail.
Yeah, the voicemail.
You can leave us a voicemail that we will get and we can play during a future episode. So if you have questions, comments, anything for referencing a previous episode or whatever, just bring it up. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah. We appreciate you listening. You guys are awesome.
Thumbs up, folks. Thumbs up.
Dustin's doing thumbs up for you on the audio podcast who can't see it. If you want to see it.
That's why I said it. That's why I did the...
It took a while. There was a little gap of time.
You dick.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Do we want to talk about what we're doing next time? We could do that.
Yeah. So next week is a little interesting for us because it's not a top 10, but it's not really... It's kind of a deep dive into a genre-ish.
Yeah. Yeah, very different kind of style.
Yeah, but more just kind of talking about ones that we've watched and have kind of learned something from or taken something away from. So we're gonna dive into documentaries next week.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about documentary filmmaking, which is a very different kind of filmmaking, but it can be incredibly effective and about very interesting topics also usually. So excited to watch some of those. I saw that you just watched Val. I'm finally talked Christy into watching Val, so we'll be doing that for sure. Talk about next week.
That one hit a little bit different. That one was, man, I have a feeling at some point I would almost say Christy might cry a few times during it.
Oh yeah.
But she'll probably definitely tear up close to how it concludes.
Okay.
Or getting close to the ending. You might even get a little, is it Dusty in here?
I was about to say, I was like, the more I think about Val Kilmer and how much I love him, I'm probably going to steam up a little bit.
I was doing so well, and then there were a couple moments that happened in it that I was like,
I have to go to the kitchen and get a beer. There's something in both my eyes.
I was, oh my God, I need a snack. I haven't grocery shopped yet. I have no snack. Son of a bitch. No distraction.
Yeah.
Val was amazing. I loved it. Very kind of excited for it. It'll be weird watching a shitload of documentaries, just kind of trying to get into it. It'll be weird.
Yeah. So I think it'll be interesting because I know a lot of young filmmakers start out kind of doing documentary stuff. So it could be interesting to hear about what works and what doesn't, what we like and what we don't, at least from an audience perspective.
Kind of stuck with us. There's definitely a few that have stuck with me. So
yeah.
Man, I'm so excited. I'm going outside when we finish this.
Don't get struck by lightning.
No, dude, the way that my porch or my patio is set up, the rain never comes all the way into it. So I can just sit in my chair and just watch the full storm and I stay dry.
That's
no
awesome.
Lightning. Well, I don't get struck by the lightning, but the lightning does come close. There have been a few strikes that I'm like,
that's awesome. I love thunderstorms.
So happy. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Yay.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. And
thank you everyone.
Talk to you next time.
Woohoo.